So pumped that you're here. Lorianne, super special guest today.
Yes, very special guest. Been looking forward to this guest for a long time now.
For a long time. All right, Patrice Poltzer is going to be here and talk about why every single one of you who is a brand builder, an innovator, they all start with a story and they have a story to share, and how she helps you get that story out. Let's get ready to learn, and we'll be right back with our guest in 30 seconds. Donnie? Hey, all right. Welcome back. So Patrice Poltzer, she is a former Today Show producer. I'm so pumped to have her on. Before we get going, real quick, it's something Lorianne and I have decided we want to start doing. Lorianne, tell them what you do.
Thank you. I am a coach, a speaker, and an author. And what I help small business owners actually leverage speaking opportunities to market their business, because speaking positions you as the expert, allows you to pull in the right people to work with you, and it allows you to basically monetize your authority.
Love it.
There you go.
I love it. And Contagious
Leadership. Tell the audience what you do.
That's exactly right. We're here to help you monetize essentially your creative content, help offset that cost if you're a large corporation. And we have a goal this year in 2023 that we want to help 1,000 small entrepreneurs and solopreneurs hit 100 grand with less than $100 worth of investment. We'll show you why and how later. But anyways, let's get into our guest. Donnie, let's go ahead and introduce Patrice and give her a round of applause. Yeah, there we go. We have an amazing studio audience, by the way.
Well, I mean, that whole intro, I was not expecting the video and the music. I mean,
oh my gosh. Wait till you see, just so you know, wait till you see what Donnie has been working on. I'll tell you that right now. It gets better and better all the time.
Better and better all the time.
Yeah, better and better all the time. So anyways, go ahead, Lorianne.
I was going to say, we just keep, that's one of the things that every time I speak, I just I'm a firm believer of look in the rearview mirror to move forward. Hey, what did I like? What didn't I like? What could I do better? And that's exactly what we do on this show, is we are constantly basically raising our bar. How do we make this show more interesting and appealing to our audience so that we keep putting out great content? So Patrice, I'm so excited that you are here and what you're going to be able to teach and share with our audience today.
So you have on your page real quick, Patrice, and I love this. Every founder has a story.
Yes.
So true.
It is
so true.
Right?
So talk to us. Today Show. I've looked at your bio. You kind of built yourself up, and you went from the customer service space, right, of the restaurant industry, and then here you go, and you're getting further up. Is that right? Or did I get that wrong?
I wasn't in the restaurant industry. No, I was not.
Reviewing. I'm sorry. It was a restaurant review. Yes. I'm so sorry.
I was like, you would not want me in the customer service part of the restaurant industry. It would just not be good. No.
First Bites.
I mean, what'd you say?
First Bites. That was
First Bites. Yeah. So that was sort of my first. It's kind of in the middle of the story, but yeah, that was sort of my first foray, after I had my first kid and I was still working at the Today Show and national TV. I think, a lot of parents can relate. You have your kids and at first, before you have kids, you think kids are going to be like a career ender and your life's going to be over. That's what at least I thought. But when I had my kids, it actually kind of sparked this whole other path. An entrepreneurial path. And so the First Bites was one of the first sort of side hobbies I had when I was in corporate America that I really think kind of launched like an entrepreneurial path, if you will.
Got it. And so you started coming up from a digital journalist, and that was originally with NBC. Is that right?
Yeah, I always say I was a late bloomer. I really didn't get going until I was 30. I mean, I was very like it was not one of these people that like graduated college and was like, this is what I'm doing. I mean, I sold books door to door all over the country for 3 years. It was like 100% commission job. Like nothing screams like you are lost in life when you graduate and you're like, I'm gonna just like go sell books. They were not Bibles, all around the country. And so I there was sort of a lot of that in my 20s, and just like watching my friends get promoted and watching my friends have these like fancy corporate jobs. And, you start to wonder like, where did I go wrong? And eventually I sort of, found my path, but it was not linear at all. It was very, very wobbly. And then even so, I remember being an intern at 29. I was an intern at CNN, and I remember being so embarrassed because, interns aren't 29, interns are 22, they're 21, they're 20. And I remember there was a very poignant moment when someone asked me, how old are you? Or like, they just assumed I was younger. And I remember at that moment, it was like this like shameful feeling like, God, I am so late to the party. And like, I am not, I should be, people that were younger than me were my bosses. So it was just like this really odd start. And then once I got my foot in the door at NBC in New York, things kind of moved along. But anyway, for anyone listening, I just feel like there's angst, especially with social media, like you're not doing what you should be doing and you're behind and you're too late and you're too this and you're too that. But I'm like, I didn't have a normal job until I was 30. So like, it's okay wherever you are.
I think it's interesting because just even the way you're coming into that, I cannot tell you how many amazing people we meet that have reached a certain level of success and their life is really focused in. They almost all have very similar stories. And I think it's really interesting because one of the things that I try to teach the young people that work for us is that your 20s are not for you to figure it out. Your 20s are for you to try everything and make mistakes and get yourself prepared, because I don't know, I personally believe that you being in your later 20s had a lot to do with you being able to scale yourself a lot faster, especially those door-to-door sales. I'll tell you what, 3 years being able to put up with that and learning how to deal with that. There is a special place for those of us who've had to do door-to-door sales.
I know. I'm just saying. No, it's so true. And ironically, it's how I got my first job at NBC. And true story, one of the guys who's still a mentor, he's not at the company anymore, but I remember I managed to get an interview for this position at NBC, and I was woefully underqualified, like woefully, like the position I was going for was like the skill set I like didn't really have. I was kind of coming fresh out of an internship. I was at Bloomberg TV for a hot minute. That was a pretty terrible job. But I remember I was interviewing with him and we just started chatting about my background, and I don't know how we landed on it, but I started talking about door-to-door sales and he kept asking me all these questions. Fast forward, I ended up getting this job. It was not at the Today Show yet. It was the job right before the Today Show. And he hired me and he said, he goes, when you said that you went door to door, and I'm talking like door to door in like Texas, door to door in like small town Florida, like, I mean, it was just not, these are not like metropolises. Like I was like kind of plunked in the middle and it's like, go. He goes, I could teach you how to shoot. I could teach you how to edit video. I could teach you how to write scripts, but you can't really teach someone how to go door to door. And then like,
no, what? I'm not kidding. When I say that, I mean it. Like I have been in and out of operations and sales most of my life. There is something you learn, and getting beat up like that, going through that and getting beat up like that, you cannot learn that in any other environment than out there. And it creates something in you that just develops something very special. Like I said, so I'm not shocked that that was part of your prerequisite into coming into where you are today. Here's where I'm really curious. Video journalism, where did that start to fall into your career? When did that, because you didn't just kind of do well there. And let's talk a little bit about that, how you got some pretty neat awards on this.
So video journalism.
It's okay, by the way. There's nothing wrong. A little humble bragging. Little humble brag is totally cool.
I'm like, did I do? I know. As you were saying that, I'm thinking like, did I do well? Was I doing well? It's just funny, like I'm trying to like process what you're saying.
Gracie award-winning video. That part.
Yeah. No, I definitely went out with a bang at the Today Show. Like,
all right.
But it's funny how like your path changes as you go along, at some point. So, at some point, I remember thinking like, oh, well, when I was selling books door to door, my last year I was selling books in LA, or I was selling books in California. And I was like one of my communities was like a very wealthy, like mountain town right north of LA. And I remember I sold books to one of the guys who ran he did all the American Idols. And I remember I was in his house, I was like talking to his family. His wife was the anchor for KTLA. And they're just like, why aren't you should be on TV. Like you should be an anchor, like, and so he kind of like, and I was sort of like, oh, I'm like, well, maybe I'll do that. And so when I went back to Chicago, I was about 25, 26. I ended up getting an internship at WGN TV, which is like I'm sure, do you know WGN? Do they have that?
Yeah. Well, here was the thing: was WGN from Chicago or the LA side of it?
No, WGN Chicago with like.
Okay, all right, yes. So I grew up on the West Coast, and then I know WGN. Mm-hmm.
Tom Skilling. I mean, it's such a cult, like So that was my first like foray into TV, and I'm like this is amazing. I'm like, oh my God, like especially in WGN is not a normal news program, it's more of a variety show. It was so fun. So anyway, so that internship sort of sparked. And so then eventually I ended up, thank God, like, I mean, the internet was around, but like, thank God, like it wasn't around how it was. I ended up getting not paid, by the way. There was a show called Nude Hippo, your Chicago show. And I was the host or the co-host. And it's like one of those shows that was on public access TV. And I remember my parents were like, I'm sorry, what? Like you just sold books door to door and now you're doing like a nude hippo, huh? And you had to like go to Star Trek conventions and it's just like so ridiculous. And so I did this show and I remember being like, I am going to get a job as a reporter. And 200 like job applications and going door to door to stations all over the Midwest. I could not get a job. And I remember one news director sat me down. He's like, I'm going to put on the screen a video of the person I just hired. Keep in mind, my reel was like, all I had was like me at Star Trek conventions and me in like Shrek costumes and me like doing these weird things on TV. And I'm like interviewing for these like local reporting jobs. And he put in a video and it was like a girl outside the White House. And I was like, oh shit. Like, and I'm like, okay. And he goes, so you're a little rough around the edges. He goes, so like, I couldn't get hired at like Market 500. I mean, it was just like, and so again, you go through these, like, what am I doing? I'm again, like so lost. So he goes, have you ever considered going to grad school? Northwestern has a 1-year program, you should apply. And I had never thought of going to grad school. It wasn't even like it wasn't even in like the realm of possibility. And I ended up applying to this Northwestern. They had a 1-year program, just paid off the debt like recently. That's a whole other podcast. But that I ended up getting into that program, and then that kind of set me off on a different direction. So that's how I got into video journalism. So I actually did get a little bit refined at Northwestern, but I came at such a great time because it was like 2008. Mm-hmm. And so you had to learn how to, not only shoot video and edit video, you had to learn how to do websites. It was at that time period where it was like, it just wasn't like, I want to be on air. It's like, no, you need some tech skills, my friend. Yeah. So I was able then to get into places because I could make a website. I could edit. I had tech skills. So the tech skills actually were the reason why I was able to get some of these like prestigious quote unquote CNN internships. They didn't care about me being on air. It was like, no, like we need you to be able to like manage, the online stuff. So sorry, this is a long-winded answer to your story, but like the grad school did shape me up. I'm not saying I would recommend that for everyone, but for me, I mean, I was like 27.
Don't worry, it's not long-winded. Like this is, But this
how
is good
grateful for the guy who gave you the feedback.
Yeah.
And I can so relate with that, Patrice, because somebody did that for me.
Oh, really?
And it was in healthcare.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was just like, thank you for giving me honest feedback so that I could, go work, on like what I needed in order to move forward. Yeah. That was, I'm sure like you just so appreciate that conversation.
I did at the time. I was mortified because, you literally, you're like, when he put this tape or this video on of this girl, outside the White House, like in a suit. And I'm literally like, there's a screenshot of me and I'm like in a Shrek Fiona costume, at an anchor desk. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. But also too, I had nothing to lose at that point, I was living at home still. And look, I realized that in and of itself is even a privilege, right? Like not everyone has had that fallback, but I was still living at home. But all of my friends, like when I say all, I mean all, were like living in the city and like had their own apartments and like, it was just such a weird, you couldn't pay me to go back to my 20s. It's just so angsty. I was like, 20s are awful. They're like awful. Like, I swear to God, everyone's like, oh, your 20s? I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like,
no, I wouldn't go back either. I'm not going to lie. Like, I would go back for a couple things. Like, I wouldn't mind my 20-year-old body. That'd be cool. Right. But, but no, 20s. No, not at all. 30s. I wouldn't mind 30s again. I do a couple different things differently. And in the 40s, well, we haven't finished those yet. So we'll see.
And I only want to go back if I can go back with all of my knowledge.
Yes. Oh yeah. No, for sure. But we hear the story all the time, right? I mean, people are always saying this, like, what do they say? The youth is wasted.
Wasted on the young.
Yeah. Anyway, so here we go. Fast forward. You've now been involved with the Today Show, and talk a little bit about this. And here's what I'm curious about, Patrice. How did the switch happen? Because your comment in your bio and then on your LinkedIn page felt very familiar to me. Okay, so tell me how it went. Where your life is also growing, your career is going through, and you make this transition switch. You're a part of something big, and then you decide, hey, there are others that need to understand the importance of this right here.
Yes. That's a really great question. Okay. Cliff notes. Okay. This is like, yeah. All right. So fast forward, like ended up, after the internship, I ended up moving to New York on a whim. I'm like, I gotta get out of Chicago. So I'm like, I need a bigger playing field here. And also Chicago is like, love Chicago, but it's like, unless it's like so everything is nepotism, and like there's just not a lot of opportunities actually in media at the time. There's probably more now, but at the time it's like, unless you kind of descended from like a legacy of the same last name, like it was just very hard. People don't move. So I'm like, screw this, I'm going to New York. So went to New York. And I ended up getting a job at Bloomberg TV, right? So that kind of like, it was the worst job ever. It was overnight. I was like covering the Asian markets. I was like, what part of like my resume or anything screams that I know anything about this? But I got in. And so that kind of like got me going. And so once I got in the Today Show, that took a few years, but when I got to my place, it's funny. Like I never, ever aspired. I never thought about having a business. I never wanted to have a business. I really thought that entrepreneurs were special people. I always just assumed that people that had their own businesses or did like things that were not corporate, you were born that way. You knew the minute, I had a lemonade stand when I was younger. It's like the same narrative everyone has. Like, I'm like, I never had a lemonade stand. Like, what are you talking about? So I just sort of had this narrative, my own story that like, entrepreneurs are special and like
we are special. It's just a different kind, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but the kind of how I transitioned, it was by force. So I was at the Today Show. Left on a high. I won this award for this like I got really involved in a Syrian refugee crisis, which is another type of podcast. But did all this stuff. And then when I was on maternity leave with my second kid, I got really into Snapchat. Stay with me here. Right before I went on maternity leave, one of the interns, Phoebe, who is still at the Today Show, she's like, Patrice, you'd be so good on Snapchat. And I remember being like, at the time I was like 33. I'm like, no one wants to see like a mom of two, like on Snapchat. Like, what are you talking about? So she taught me how to use Snapchat, and I went on maternity leave. Fast forward, I got so into Snapchat. Like, it was like I was in like a Snapchat world. Little did I know there was this guy that was following me, and he messaged me on LinkedIn. It was 2016, the summer of 2016. He goes to me, this is so weird. I almost feel a little bit like weird even reaching out to you. He goes, I follow you on Snapchat. He goes, and I need you to come to my company. Like, I need you. I don't know, like, I just need you to come to the company. I thought it was like a joke. I was like on maternity leave with like a newborn and a toddler. And I'm like, this, like, what? Like,
yeah, like, are you a creep or like, you follow me on Snapchat? Okay.
Snapchat content? It was bizarre. Turns out there's this startup in New York, and this is right around the time when no one knew Facebook was inflating all their views, but when like, a BuzzFeed video would have like 50 billion views and people would go mental, and like advertisers were like, oh my God, like I need to get in on this money. So they bought up a lot of like mom bloggers, like people that had big like Facebook audiences, but didn't know how to do video. And they were trying to grow all these like popular platforms
these little organic hubs.
Yes.
Where they totally.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So and they were like, fancy startup people, like, they sold their original company to like Amazon, Quidzy for like $1 bajillion. Like, so it was like all these people that were in like the tech world that were trying to enter the media world. And so they recruited me. And I remember I had like 3 meetings like in the city. And I remember being like, this doesn't happen to people on maternity leave. I'm not even looking for a job. It was just the whole experience felt very surreal. And so they kept throwing money at me. And I remember being like, whoa. So I remember I went back to my boss on maternity leave. I called him. I'm like, dude, this is what's happening. I was like, I loved working. I really did. So I didn't want to leave. I was like, can you like do something with this? He's like, no. He's like, get out of here. Like, leave. Like, go learn digital things and like come back to us like when you can run the company. He's like, no. He's like, Patrice, get out of here. Like, he gave me my blessing. It's a small world. You can't burn bridges, right? So I ended up not returning back to NBC after my second maternity leave. And so I ended up going to this job, and it was like my dream job, except I learned very, 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 very soon that it was like a nightmare. So it ended up being the worst professional experience I like have ever had. And became this soul crushing, esteem destroying experience where I was out of my depth. It was the whole thing was awful. And at the time, like my husband had taken a huge career risk himself. So I had the health insurance. Like, it was kind of a 4-year play. I was making awesome money. And I was just like, this is awful. And so anyway, I did not last. I only lasted like 100 days. And so, I mean, this show had a going away party for me. And like 90 days later, just about a little bit more, I was without a job. So I remember like at the top of 2017, I was just like, what just happened, And so I was just not in a place to even, I'm getting to your question, but there needs to be context.
The context is important. It is. Yeah. And you said something earlier. You said, I just want to remind you, said, I kind of fell into it. I'm going to tell you something about entrepreneurship. Very, very rare do we say, oh, hey, I got this great idea. It usually is a forced move. Yeah. And we realize, you know what? I can solve this problem. I can do this. That's
Totally
typically how this works. Just a little FYI.
Yeah.
We've interviewed quite a few of them.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
I was not an I can solve any type of problem. Like, I was just like, I can't even get off the floor. Like, I mean, I always joke, like, the one like amazing part of that experience is I was such a shell of a human. And I was just like on edge. Like, I mean, I lost my baby weight with my second, like in a month. I was just like, and I'm back. Like, because I was just, it was not how I would ever advise anyone. But I remember like, I was just so, you get to a point where when you were in such a toxic environment, you don't even trust, you can't even trust your own decision-making process. Like if someone asks you a question, and you're just, I couldn't even like answer it because I'm like, I don't know. Like I doubt everything. Like everything was kind of stripped. So, and I lived in New York City. I had a newborn, I had a toddler. I had a husband that took a career move. So he was not in like a stable position either. And it was very scary. And I remember there was a moment where my husband, who is like, he's the best person ever, he's just like, I need you to get up off the floor. Like, I need you. Like, we need you. Like, basically it's like, go start making some money, bitch. Like, not really, but like literally. Like, we need to, we want to stay in Manhattan and like have this life. Like, my husband was like, should I go back to the corporate? But I was like, I can't make you do that. Like, you're doing your thing. Like, it was just, oh my God. And I remember thinking like, oh, I don't have enough esteem to actually go back and interview. Like if someone would have, because I was thinking like, okay, well, it wasn't like, oh, I'll just go back and get another job in New York media. It was like, and I remember I told my boss what was happening and, he was kind of joking like, well, there's always a place for you here. It was kind of like, ha, ha, ha. But like, I don't even know if that was true, number one, but number two, it was also a little pathetic, right? Like you leave to this party and then like, 4 months later, it's like you're back. Like you can't actually cut it outside of NBC Rockefeller walls. Like, so it was just sort of like, I can't go back there. And so I will say that in that 4 months though, this experience I had, it was the first time that I had ever been around brands because I was an editorial, in journalism and editorial, it's like, old school. And now it's a little bit murky, but before it's like you have advertorial or you have ads and you have editorial and you do not mix. It's like sacrilegious. And it was right around that 2015, 2016, that's like, and I say this, I hate to always use this video, but the Dollar Shave Club video. Do you remember that video?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I referenced that quite a bit, but yeah. It's
and I roll to this day, like I cannot tell you how many brands like, we want you to do a video like the Dollar. I'm like, oh my God. Like, but I get it. Because it was so new. And by the way, he came from NBC, which is a funny story. It was like no one had ever taken a straight up product ad and decided to put all the rules aside and just make a really great story that's entertaining and made you want to like share the video. Like it was truly groundbreaking at that time. And so right around that time is when all these other brands were starting to be like, oh, well, like we need to make content to sell our stuff, but they're marketers. So I was working with like, Unilever and, big CPG brands when I was at this startup. And I was like, I've never done this before, but I remember being in meetings and, the marketing team is like talking about script ideas. And I'd be like, that is so bad. Like no one is going to watch that. Like, because you have to understand the world that I came from was hardcore editorial. And if your story wasn't hooking or your script wasn't hooking your boss, it went through so many layers of approval before it actually went on air. And you'd be on the cutting board or your story wouldn't air. So you start to realize what the story, especially a video story, what it needs in order to like hook in an audience and then keep them there. And I remember being in these meetings and like working with these clients and being like, you guys, this is horrible. Like, this is not a story. You're just talking about your product and no one cares about your product. Like, why does anyone care about your product? So I didn't realize, but at the time I remember thinking like, this is crazy. Like they should just have journalists. If they just would hire all my old coworkers on my team, like we would come in and we'd be like, bam, like we will make you a video that is amazing. was not thinking that like, that's what I was going to do. But I remember thinking like, wow, this is backwards. So when I left, when I got like laid off for all intents and purposes.
When you made a decision to go other ways.
Yeah.
Sure. I got you. I got you. I got you. It's all good. It's all good.
No, I got like laid off. And so I remember, but because I was not in the proper mindset to interview, I just would have been like, do not hire me. Like, you do not want to hire me. I suck. Like, that's where I was at. There was a friend of a friend who knew like that I did video and just like, you know, hey, my friend has this startup. And at the time, I'm like, startup, wow, I don't even know what that means. You know, they need a video for their homepage. Can you do the video? And at the time, like I shot video, I had, you know, edited video, and I'm like, sure. And so so that's, you know, so I started doing a video for one company, and then all of a sudden, fast forward, and, you know, I'm all of a sudden, you know, you're doing, you know, the Department of Education hired me in New York. And like, and so I wouldn't even say I had a company, because the whole time I was doing these projects, I was just like, I'm just freelancing. I'm just getting this all back into high self-esteem mode, because I need to get back to a real job. I need to get back to a career. This is just like, I need to have some money coming in. My husband's doing his own thing. I need to, you know, I never viewed it as like a career. And then I had like a come to Jesus moment when like probably like a year and a half in, where I was actually going into bankruptcy, because like I was just I wasn't treating this like a business. I was like doing video for free. Like I didn't even have any. And anyway, so I got to a point where I lost a pretty big piece of business. And the girl, again, talk about these people that come into our life and tell it like it is. So this is kind of funny. Did you guys watch Billions, that show?
Yeah.
Yep. Showtime.
Love it.
Yeah. But anyway, the house in that, like, that was her father, and her father has like this big VC company, and they wanted to hire me and my team to come out to the Hamptons and shoot all this video content and interview all these like founders, and like it was amazing. And we hit it off at this networking event, and she's like, "You're my girl. I love you. Like, you're gonna come to this." So I was like, "This is amazing." So I remember gave her my stuff, like gave her some pricing. And I didn't hear from her for like a week. And so I called or emailed her. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, can I be honest with you? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, can we talk actually? So we call, she calls me. She goes, I'm gonna be like dead straight with you. I was like, oh my God, what? She goes, first of all, I cannot hire you. She's like, you're not, like, we went with someone else. And I was like, okay. She goes, what in the actual fuck is your website? And I remember being like, wait, what? What do you mean my website? She goes, Patrice. So context, up until that point, I didn't have a real website. I had like a website with my name on it, and it was like a picture of me with a giraffe and a camera, and it was really weird, and I was pregnant, and like she was pitching me. I didn't realize that she had to pitch me into like her team. And like, she goes, you need to step up. She goes, because I didn't know your website was so awful. She's like, so during the meeting, I'm talking about this awesome person I met, former Today Show. And then I put your website, and everyone is like, is she a National Geographic? Like, what is going on? Why is she pregnant? Like, why is there a giraffe? Like, and I was like trying to be like very like funny on my website. So I cringe, you know, like even the way I wrote it, it was just like, first of all, wasn't funny. And like, but I thought it was at the time. So I was like making all these like self-deprecating jokes. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, people are hiring me for their like business. So she's like, and so in that moment, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm wasting I've been doing this for a year and a half. I've been doing this not fully present, not in a real way, like a throwaway way. I'm like, I at least gotta like go all in and at least see where it goes. And then if I want to go back to corporate America, then I'll do that. But I kind of got like annoyed at myself.
So you really had two angels that came into your life and just told you the way it is.
I've never had anyone say that to me before, but now that you're saying it, like I guess, and they would have no idea. Actually, the girl, she might remember because it was so ridiculous. I'm sure she remembers maybe my giraffe website, but it is true. Yeah. Like that was the catalyst where I then but then COVID hit and my whole business fell apart. So, you know what I mean? It's just like constant, like, oh my God.
But these moments help, reinvent us, right?
Yes.
And especially when you get into this level of entrepreneurship, the change is absolutely necessary. The change is the part that makes us better. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I know that you've given this amazing context to how you've gotten to this place, but the truth is you wouldn't have been able to understand how important the story is for each founder and how that story is going to impact them in the market because you had to experience it yourself. One of the things, Patrice, that I have to give credit to with you is that not only from what I already know now, especially with this context of what you've brought, they didn't just come with, I was, award-winning Today Show producer. This was, I did it all wrong, right? Look at all the things I did wrong. And then I have now come to figure out just how important these elements are, the 1, 2, 3 points and why this matters. And so you didn't just come with experience and understanding, you also came with the element of being one of those founders, of being a business owner that had to figure something out the wrong way and just what impression you give when people go and they look at you for the first time. And I think that's really important because we shouldn't be teaching what we don't understand. We should only teach really, truly what we know how to do. And I think especially in our field, right? In this realm right now, in this coaching and in consulting side, there's so many people that are trying to teach and develop that they don't know. Like they're just grabbing it and maybe they have a little bit of knowledge, but they didn't get there, right?
No,
they didn't build that.
That's such a great point. And I always say that because now it's funny, the past year, the brand video side, I still have that side, but when COVID hit, that fell apart, I mean, when production stops, like it always seems like when I'm pregnant, like these major, like horrible things happen. So like, again, COVID hit, I was pregnant with my third kid, which by the way, my poor son is the only person who's ever going to have older siblings in 2020. Like no one was deciding to have another baby in like 2020, especially like living in a New York apartment, like let's have a third baby. But the production stopped. I remember being like, oh my God, like, like I'm pregnant with my third, like how am I making money? And prior to COVID, it's so serendipitous, but like 3 months before COVID, so like December, I remember thinking, I have got to figure something else out because at the time I was running around like an insane person, like tripods and shoots and video shoots. And you have to understand, like I have to pay out my team. So any business that I brought in, it was automatically cut in half. My margins were always 50% because I have to pay out my shooters, my editors, my animators. And all of a sudden, maybe that $50,000 project or whatever it is, it's automatically in half and you cut that half again for tax. And then those projects also have a longer sales cycle. So it's like, it was like, oh my God, it's like I am hustling all the time, always networking, always out. I felt exhausted. I'm like, this is not fun. Like, this is not like, entrepreneurial freedom. I'm like, give me a 2-week paycheck any day. I was like, this is horrible. So I was already feeling angsty. And I remember being like, and so at the time, I did not know that like online business was a thing. I did not know that people made money online. I know that sounds crazy, but I did it. Like if you would have mentioned, I don't know, like, Amy Porterfield, Maria Forleo, I did not know their names from Adam. Like, and you know what? A friend of mine, she's a mentor in this space. She kind of put it in an interesting way. She goes, people like in New York or people like in LA, like when you have access. So a lot of these people that are really successful, they're in the middle of America, like in these small towns. And you know what? You don't have access in the same way. So if you want access, you got to get on the internet. And so all these people that like are crazy successful, a lot of them actually are not in the East Coast or the West Coast or from Chicago or like these bigger cities and she said, she goes, it's so funny. Like people, she goes, because she's in this space and she, again, crazy, like, multi-millionaire times 10 over from a small town in Georgia. And she goes, all of my friends that are like, live in New York, like everyone's late because we've been doing this for 10 years. Like, yep. We're not in the cities. And it just kind of like, it was just like a really interesting connection. I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, she introduced me to this world of making money online. I remember she goes, you're crazy. She's like, why aren't you monetizing your knowledge? I remember being like, what does that even mean? And she taught me, she's like, you should be, why don't you do like a live Zoom course? I'm like, and teach what? I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I make video. Brands hire me to make video. What am I going to teach? I'm not a teacher. She goes, you are not looking at this properly. And she was so adamant. And then the COVID hit. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to go online. Like so many businesses, right? That all of a sudden were like forced to become e-com or digital or figure out like what they're going to do brick and mortar online. I was in the same boat. And so
here's what I'm hearing. Every time an opportunity knocked on your door, you were like, oh no.
Yeah,
You were
trying
to shut the door on them and they are pushing the door open saying, no, Patrice, you need to look at this differently. I mean, I love it. It's amazing that you actually came into the online world.
And now it's my revenue. Like it trumps. Like it's unbelievable. And so then to 2020, I got online. I was a business owner first, and this is what I always say. I have such empathy for people that are afraid to show up on video and go on video and talk because I get it. I came from the video world. I worked with people to go on national television. Yet when it's yourself and the camera's on you and you have to get on camera, all of the bad stuff just goes straight to your brain. I'm not good enough. Why would anyone care what I have to say? My voice is horrible. I'm not that cute. I'm too old. I'm too young, whatever it is. And so it took me 3 years from starting my business to actually take my own camera, look at it, and like talk about what I do and what I think what I know and this knowledge that I've had, at all these places. I didn't think anyone would care. And so it's just, I get it. I get why going on video is scary because I had the same negative thoughts. And so, but I had no choice. I was pregnant with my third and my business was shut effectively because of COVID. So I'm like, I literally have nothing to lose, number one. And it's like, this is a necessity. Like I need to contribute, we're a double income family here in New York. Like I got to get myself to work. So I didn't even think about it. All of a sudden, all my nerves and my fear, I'm like, don't care. We got
to figure this out. Yeah, we got to figure this out. Isn't it interesting, Patrice, how we automatically disqualify our own experience or anything else. And we decide what we think the market is going to find valuable or not. And I think that's really interesting because a lot of times I think on the flip side, entrepreneurs can make the mistake where they go into the market making a predetermination on what's valuable, right? It's just as negatively impacting where somebody goes in and goes, this is valuable. Well, how about you check with the market first? Go out and test and let them tell you if it's valuable. And it's the same thing where I talk to people and, we work with a lot of the same type of personalities and I don't have anything to share. How do you know? Start sharing first off, and you're going to find your space, right? I'm not going to teach the C-level executive how to run a billion-dollar company, but I can teach the solopreneur how to do what I've done and build a small business, how to take their content online, how to market their message, right? That I can help them do. Why? Because I did it. I learned it, and here's what I did. Ta-da, there you go. We'll find the market that wants it. It's really interesting. You said that. I was at a convention years ago and I sat down, I paid all this money, thousands of dollars, travel, everything else. And it was this big sales convention and hundreds of men, just hundreds and hundreds. It was a men's only conference and it was about 600 men there. And all these big, giant sales gurus and these guys are out there and teaching all of these notes. And these guys, man, these pens would light on fire if they could. All these notes and all these like educated people and different types of businesses, and everyone's taking notes. And I'm looking around and I'm like, holy crap. And I just remember thinking at this point, I'd been in sales and marketing and business development in the renewable energy space, didn't realize like I'm sitting down with, Fortune 50 companies making huge billion-dollar acquisitions and deals. And I'm this guy. Like I have zero background for that. I just learned it in the field, and I'm looking around and I go, and I started counting and I started doing numbers in my, I pulled out my phone and I started calculating the amount of money that was sitting in this room and what they were all about to upsell to. And I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. And I looked at these guys and I'm like, you find this valuable? Like, is this? And they're like, this is amazing. And I'm like, holy shit. This is like basic 101 stuff. And that's what I realized. I'm the fool because I have made a predetermination on what somebody knows. Listen, if they know it, great. They'll move on. If they find value, they won't. They will continue to stay and they will continue to follow you, and you will build trust with them. And then when they get to that point, they'll either hire you or they'll share you with someone else that can take your service. So I think it's beautiful. So now let's get into this as we get closer to the end. Is every founder has a story. Yeah. You have now come through all of these years. You keep getting pushed into your business. Mm-hmm. And now here you are after COVID. How did you capture this and help us understand, how does the founder has their story? Why is that so important for them to understand?
I mean, and here's a misnomer too. I think a lot of founders and just in general, I think there's this notion that, in order to have a story worth sharing or a story worth telling, it needs to be incredibly epic. It needs to be incredibly, heroic, or, I was no money and $1 in my bank account. And, you always hear those narratives, right? Where it's like, oh my Lord. And some founders have those stories. Most people do not have those stories. And even with my own story, if you think about my story, nothing about it is epic. I got laid off from a job. How many people get laid off from a job and you're kind of at a crossroads, right? How many women, are pregnant, and feeling like, oh my God, I'm about to have another baby. And like, how does that work? Like, that's not incredibly epic. Like, but it's your story. And that's why it's epic. And also, I always say to people, the most inspirational stories aren't usually those epic stories because they're so unrelatable. The ones that tend to be epic are the ones like, I got laid off and I was scared shitless because I have 3 mouths to feed and I'm pregnant, and
a lot of people can connect with that. A lot of people can connect.
Most. And so that is actually where I always tell founders, like, I'm working with a company right now and she's incredibly impressive. She's a multi-million-dollar business and she is so afraid to actually lean into the interesting part of her story. And I had to tell her the other day, I'm like, no one cares that you built a multi-million-dollar business. But you know what? People will care a lot when they know what happened to you before that, because now you're interesting. Because like, you would never think that about her. She's almost like perfect. You kind of like have that ability where it's like, oh my God, like what's wrong with me? She always can make you feel bad, but I know her story, and it took me a long time to finally get it out of her. And now she doesn't want me to go fully there on it. And I'm pushing back. I can only push so much though. At the end of the day, I'm like, you're paying me, like I am not your therapist here. So, but I always say
it's a learning process, right? With our clients, it is. It's a learning process.
Yeah. But yes, if there's any takeaway from this, it is like, lean into your shit. I like truly lean into it and own it, because that is what makes you interesting. And it's not for the sake of like airing dirty laundry or your grievances, or like talking about, when your girlfriend dumped you when you were 12. That's not the point of it. But like, it's what you did afterwards. And that's the interesting stuff. And that's what people want to hear. Because when people are listening to your story, they don't care. Like, no one cares about me. Like, they don't care that I was at the Today Show. Like, not interesting. But you know what? When people listen to another story, they want to see themselves somehow reflected. Right. So I know that The Today Show, that's just, sure, that's maybe that like maybe will give someone, first of all, Today Show, like most young people are like, Today Show, what's the Today Show? But I know, honestly, but it still has so much social currency, so I'm not knocking it. Ask any
totally get it.
Like, get me on TV, get me on the Today Show. So lots of currency still, or social currency. But I'm like, so I always say, like, if anything, like, no one likes a highlight reel. No one likes a story that is too successful. It's like, give us the moment when you're on the bathroom floor and you're crying in the shower and you really don't know what you're going to do. And then tell us what you did after, because that's it. If you can really lean into that and like own it, that's when people are going to follow you and they're going to actually take you more seriously.
And you talk,
I have to.
Oh, go ahead, Lorianne, please.
I was going to say, it's that I had to. I think a lot of people take that part of their story for granted because they felt like, well, I had no choice. Here's what I had to do to feed like these 3 mouths that were looking at me. That's the beautiful part of the story.
And those are the pieces that we relate with. And you know what? You talked about the shift and you talked about the Dollar Shave Club. One of the biggest things that was happening there, it wasn't just creativity in the video. It was the fact that in that we were now seeing personal branding. We were seeing a connection with a person. Like, the story was true. He was really the owner. He really did what he did. And you could look it up. Like, he wasn't lying and he made it funny. Yes. But the reality is that now we were starting to find and realize today that the creativity, like that creative media side, that aspect of building personal brand and business brand matters. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people are approaching the social context, like you talked about, an old like school marketing approach and even new school marketing, but they still look at it as like I like to say it's like a matching handbag to their luggage. It's not the same anymore. This space is its own space, and you don't need a marketing degree to do this job well. I don't, we're not trying to tell people how to improve their SEO scores, which we probably could. And now with ChatGPT, it does it all for you. But anyways, another different conversation. But
no, you're so right. And I think too, that personal brand, that phrase gets like a visceral reaction because you think of like reality TV stars, or you think of like people on social media, influencers that are just trying to get famous. But here's the thing, like you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. So it's sort of like,
that's exactly right.
It's you might as well lean into it. And also because there's just so many businesses now, the barrier to entry is so low. Back in the day, it was like, oh my God, you're, an entrepreneur is like kind of this like weird thing. Everyone's an entrepreneur now. Like, you start a side hustle, and you can have a business within an hour on the internet. So it's like with that much stuff crowding our senses and assaulting our brain waves, like you have to be able, your brain just wants to shut out stuff. So it's like, if you are going to kind of cut through that, like you have to insert yourself. You're the only different thing. There are a million storytelling coaches. There are a million video people. Like,
that's right.
You are the only differentiator in the business. That's it.
And the likelihood is what your business serves and offers is probably very similar to a handful of other businesses just like you. So your story, I was being nice, right? We tell people all the time, I love it. Like my team we'll get a new client in and we're like, we'll go through the discovery and we're asking, their value props, and we already know, integrity, safety. And I'm like, I already know what you're going to say because everybody's got quality. Everybody has integrity. Everybody's the safest company. And I'm thinking, because we deal with a lot of operations and maintenance, and I'm like, okay, like, let's talk about what makes you different.
Yes.
What is different about you? What is different about how you get up in the morning? How do you value your employees? How do you create a day plan? Like, let's talk about you, because no one's going to go into the market space and go to talk to a client and go, look, check it out. We're so in this area. We're not really good on our safety side. We probably should be looked at really closely here. When it comes to integrity, we're going to tell you that, but we're going to hide. Like everybody's going to say they're the top. Yeah. So let's get away from that.
Exactly.
And I had some of the biggest clients in this space say, you know what, Rigo, you want to tell anybody something that they can learn is like, I'm so tired of hearing people say that they're the best at everything, and then they get in here and they can't produce. I want to hear something different. What makes them different? Because we already know they're going to come in and tell us they're the best.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do they separate themselves? And I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love the idea. I love how you're helping individuals find that story in themselves. Because I think that is absolutely important. Because from there, Patrice, once somebody understands their own story, everything can be built from that.
Yes.
Oh,
You can't go forward without knowing why you're doing what you're doing or who you are.
Exactly. And then that's how, and also too, like when you kind of understand thyself, you then understand what resonates with the people that you should be attracting, and you start like speaking to them specifically. So yeah, it all goes, and it's funny because because I work primarily in founder story is my jam. I mean, it makes sense if I look back, doing the stuff at the Today Show, like you're doing a lot of like kind of that like broad story appeal, right? So, and a lot of that is like general interest, human interest, founder story type stuff. And so many businesses, they will tell you they need a website, they need better social media, they need better, they need like a prettier grid. All these like superfluous, in my opinion, components of a business. Yet you ask them, well, why do you do what you do, and like, what makes you different? And it's deer in headlights. And their about page is painful, and their about page is like a LinkedIn listicle resume that like talks about what schools they went to.
Nothing to connect with. Nothing for me to emotionally connect with and to trust you and to trust what you do.
Yeah, it needs to be inverted, and that's sort of part of my mission is like to kind of really showcase that once you have a handle on your founder story, you just open up so many opportunities, whether it be business, whether it be press, whether it be speaking, whether it be podcast invites, like all that stuff gets open to you once you have a story down pat. But most founders don't focus on that at first. It's like an afterthought. No,
I get it. Listen, Patrice, this has been amazing. I want to have you back. Let's have you back.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And let's do a round 2. Let's figure it out. But let's have you back and let's get into those details. Let's see if we can help some of these founders understand the importance of it and see if we can offer them a little bit of guidance and then where to find you. Real quick, where can folks go find who you are? Let's let them go see your story. Where can they find you?
Okay. All right. Come hither. Come hither. So Instagram is my main home. I'm trying to branch out. I'm trying to get, trying to date other platforms, but Instagram is just my handle. It's just at Patrice Poltzer, Poltzer. So
we'll
Instagram,
put it up.
I show up there a lot. LinkedIn, I'm dipping my toe in LinkedIn. I feel
LinkedIn is a different animal. We totally get it.
It's a different animal on LinkedIn, but also my website, patricepoltzercreative.com. Like you can reach out to me there. I do video production, so soup to nuts if anyone needs video for their business. But I also have like so many coaching programs, and I do workshop. I have a big workshop coming at the top of February about how to connect on camera, even if you've never been on video and you're like me, it took you 3 years to even speak to the camera. So, I do workshops, I do coaching. I'm having a new membership type thing where you can drop into office hours and just kind of come in and get the hell out of there if you don't want to invest in a 12-week. Not everyone has time to invest in a 12-week experience. So, I'm trying to meet people where they're at and like what they need. So
love it. Awesome. Okay. Well, listen, Patrice, don't go anywhere. We're going to go ahead and, there we go. Love the live. This is one of the things that I absolutely love about
what
live.
happens.
It's what happens.
This was a great show. So if anything that you are taking away with this, it's wrap your arms around your story. Don't try pushing it aside. Don't say one day I'll figure out what my story is. Just really embrace what your story is. And that's what you should be leading with, because that's what your audience and the ideal clients are actually they're going to be attracted to. Here we go. Any final thoughts?
No, absolutely. Like I was saying, don't go anywhere. We're going to go ahead and put you in the back. I'm going to come back to you here in a second, but we're going to go ahead and say goodbye. And thank you very much for being here. Again, let's give Patrice a round of applause, Donnie. There we go. Yeah, we got to give a round of applause. There we go. All right, real quick, you guys, listen, thank you so much. If you enjoyed the content, if you like what we're putting out here, please do us a favor. Share this content with others. Like and subscribe to our podcast. By all means, sign up for the newsletter and let us know your thoughts. We want to hear more. And if you like the content from Patrice, hey, go let her know too as well. Go ahead and check her out on her Instagram handle and all her other social profiles. We'll go ahead and dump this here. I am grateful for you being here. Again, my name is Rigo Murillo with Contagious Media. Lori?
And I'm Lori Ann, so thank you very much for...
That's it. You guys, God bless. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Same time, Thursday, 1 o'clock. for the Contagious Leadership Podcast. Donnie, send us out.